But before we get started, where are you from?
So originally from Allentown, Pennsylvania.
So
And,
that's
yeah.
interesting because I did construction
Okay.
in Allentown, Pennsylvania
Yeah.
for about a month.
Okay.
There's a FedEx plant, like
Yeah.
a warehouse center.
Yep.
And so what my job was it was called a road warrior. So basically the way construction works is they have this big project, which is the whole plant.
Yeah.
And they bring in these different subcontractors, some for electricity, some for painting, some for all this stuff. But eventually when the job is almost done, they start letting everybody go. Because they don't need them as much.
Right.
It's just the construction game. So when they find that out, everybody just leaves.
Yeah.
And so then they have nobody to finish the job.
Yeah.
So the road warriors come in and say, we'll finish the job. We'll do the checklist items, the putting stuff up and the nailing. But we're going to charge you like double. And so, I was working in construction. I was in insurance and I was like kind of in between or something weird. And I remember Allentown, Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
And I was like holding up these like thin sheets of metal all the way up. And it was like the toughest thing I've ever done. So Allentown's pretty interesting that you're from there. It's a great little town too.
Yeah. I actually grew up in a really small town outside of Allentown, a little Appalachian Trail town. But I always say I'm from Allentown because my dad lived in Allentown and it's like 20 minutes outside of Allentown. Nobody knows where Slatington, Pennsylvania is. So.
Listen, no one knows where Sherwood, Arkansas is either, right?
I actually do. I lived in Sherwood.
Did you?
I did. I was, probably 2. My family moved to Sherwood and then Cabot, Arkansas, when I was like from 1.5 to 7. We lived in Arkansas. My dad got a job with Remington down there.
How old were you?
30. I'm going to be 31 next month.
So I'm 34. So we might have gone to Sylvan Hills Elementary at the same time.
Yeah, I'd have to ask my mom. I don't remember what elementary school I went to, but I remember going to kindergarten there. I went to I think I went to kindergarten when we lived in Cabot. But when we first moved there, we moved to Sherwood, and my parents rented a house there and then bought a house in Cabot like a couple years later.
That's crazy. I've never met anybody else that's like I know exactly where Sherwood is, and I'm like, because most people are like, where are you from? And I'm like, L.A., like Lower Arkansas.
Yeah.
I'm like, where's that at? I'm like, Sherwood. And like, where's that at? And I'm like, Jacksonville. They're like, where's that? I'm like, Little Rock.
Yeah.
It's just easier to say Little Rock at that point. You know
that's I don't know where anything is in Arkansas other than like Little Rock and then where I lived when I was little that I have almost no memory of, like little memories. But I mean, we moved to Pennsylvania when I was 7.
Okay.
So,
yeah. I moved to South Carolina when I was 8. So I don't really remember much of Arkansas.
Yeah.
But I remember going to some pool. I remember my friend's house growing up, like all these like little things, but I don't remember like,
Do you remember the tornado, like the tornadoes, the tornado warnings, like the drills? I remember that. And now I'm like, when we get tornadoes here, I'm like, yeah, like we should pay attention to them, but like nothing. Like,
oh, no.
I'm not as stressed out as I think a lot of people get about the tornado warnings.
Yeah,
here.
we've got hurricanes here, which is definitely different.
Yeah.
But that's really crazy that you know that we're in the same vicinity, if you will.
That's really funny.
Yeah. So you moved around because of father's work? Or?
Yeah. So my parents had me when they were super young. And then I don't even know if my dad, he was finishing college. So I think one of his first jobs he got with Remington, he's a packaging engineer. And so got a job with Remington and then actually designed the way that they package bullets still today. Like imagine if he did that on his own. Remington owns the patent, obviously. So they're,
Sure. I mean,
yeah. So that's why we moved to Arkansas, and then he got a job with Fisher Clinical Services, which is they have a headquarters outside of Thermo Fisher is what they are now, but in Fogelsville, Pennsylvania, which is next to Allentown. And so then we moved there when I was 7, and then I lived there pretty much until I went to college at Penn State, met my husband there, and then we moved to Arizona for law school. And so we lived there for almost 9 years and then moved here.
So how long have you been here?
November of 2022, we moved here. So almost 2 years. So not a super long time.
Dude, I love Wilmington. It's like this little, I call it this like a little hidden gem that no one really knows about.
Yeah.
But then once you know about it, you're like, I'm never.
Yeah.
I love it here.
Yeah. So my dad, when I moved to, my husband's name was Matt.
Sounds like a good guy.
I know a ton of great Matts. So when we moved to Arizona, my dad moved down here. And they opened the 2 Anytime Fitness gyms that are here. And so we had been visiting Wilmington for 9 years or so before we moved here. So we were familiar with it, but super fun. Like, love being by the beach.
Yep.
Arizona was amazing, but Wilmington's just, I love it. It's such a positive place, I think, to be in.
I kind of tell, I know this sounds weird because I'm from South Carolina, but like I view Wilmington, like the downtown scene.
Yeah.
It's like Charleston, if you've ever been down there.
Yeah.
Just the water's not as dirty.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's smaller.
Yeah.
But it's got this really cool, like quaint vibes. You just walk around and just do whatever you want all day. And it's like, I got nothing to do. And go to the beach and go here and go here. It's like, you can never not have something to do in Wilmington.
Yeah.
There's always something to do.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. There's always an event going on. There's always, for personal and for work, I feel like you could always do something. And now there's, apps coming out that are making it even easier to find out what's going on in Wilmington. I know there's a couple I follow, like What's Up Wilmington. And then there's this new one. I don't know how new it is, but it's new to me. Check What's Good.
Okay.
And they like list all the events going on every weekend, which is kind of cool.
What was that other one? Was that What's Up Wilmington?
Yeah.
I don't know if I know. I'm a part of so many groups.
Yeah. They're like, I think they have a podcast.
So it's a blogger. Okay.
Yeah. There's 2 people, Roz and then Alyssa, who was actually my realtor here when we moved here.
Okay.
And yeah, so she's a rock star. She's a realtor, like she's busy with that. She's a mom. And then she's also doing What's Up Wilmington, and she always is that stuff. And
the same thing is like great. I run an insurance agency, on the day-to-day because that pays the bills. That's what I know.
Yeah.
Right? I'm really good at insurance. I developed my marketing brain because of insurance.
Yeah.
And then I was like, well, I just want to do a podcast. And so there it is, right?
Yeah,
so it's just fun. And I'm like, well, instead of doing a podcast, it's like this huge nationwide thing. I'd rather just interview business owners in Wilmington because Wilmington's like the number 2 spot to open up a small business.
Yeah.
But I'm always like, okay, I want to know about the person and how they started their business. Because then you moved around, you went to law school. Like, what made you want to go to law school? Like, what?
Gosh, I've always wanted to be a lawyer. Like
really?
Even when I was little, before I even knew what it was, I have no idea when I was little why I thought I wanted to be a lawyer. I think, who knows? And you could ask my mom. Like, I'm not even just saying that. My mom will tell you. I always wanted to be an attorney. And so then when I got a little bit older and kind of figured out like a little bit, like, what does that mean? I was a very good student. I really like to write, love to read, very organized. And my mom and I were kind of like, well, what do I need to do to be able to be a lawyer? When you have to go to undergrad, then you have to take the LSATs, and then you have to get into law school, go to law school, and then take and pass the bar. And so I know a ton of lawyers who decided to do that later in life, but I'm just when I want to do something, I figure out how to do it, and then what are the steps? Like, even if it's a 10-step process, you have to start somewhere.
Yeah, you got step 1, step 2, step 3.
Yeah.
Like, just go in the right direction.
Yeah.
So when you pass the bar, it's called the bar, right?
Yeah.
Does that mean you can practice law anywhere, or are there specific, like, then if you passed it in Arizona, right, or Penn State, when you get to North Carolina, do you have to do some more certifications as well?
Yeah. So I'll give you the it depends lawyer answer.
Okay.
It really depends on what you're wanting to do and where you took the bar. So in Arizona, there's a universal bar exam that at the time I took the bar, which would have been 6 or 7 years ago now. There was like around 30 states that all administered the universal bar exam. And so it was the same exam in all those states, and the scores were transferable. Each state has their own score requirement though. So you could score and be able to practice law in one state, but not have scored high enough to practice in a different state.
Got it.
So some people would take it a couple of times if their goal was to practice in a certain state.
So it's kind of like in insurance, I pass my test here in North Carolina, but to get my non-resident in another one, I have to go get another certification. So you could pass it and now you're a part of 15 states, but then you have to retake it and to get the additional states?
Possibly. So I passed the bar and was licensed in 2018 in Arizona. And if I wanted to leave Arizona and if I wanted to move here right away, I can't remember what the score was, but Arizona's is one of the highest in the country.
So if you're passing Arizona, you're like...
Yeah. So at that time, you can just transfer your score. You have to, fill out the application, pay them. And then you could either transfer your score or there might have been some option to have a secondary license. So you could be licensed in 2 states that way.
Got it.
And that's valid for like maybe 3 years, I want to say. You could do that. It might be less now. And after that mark, then you have to wait until whatever state you want to transfer your license to's requirements are. So North Carolina requires you to practice law for 5 years to be able to apply to transfer your license there. So when I hit the 5-year mark, I applied to transfer my license here. The process took about a year.
Wow.
They do like a character and fitness, very extensive background check. They want to make sure you didn't do anything wrong in your first 5 years of practice. You're not getting sued by your clients. That you're going to be a good attorney here in this state as well. And so I didn't have any issues, but the big issue is they have to verify your employment. And for me, they send a letter, and every employer you've had as an attorney has to sign and say, yes, she was employed here during the time she says she was.
Yeah.
And so it took 4 months to track down and get my first employer out of law school to sign the document. And so that's what took a long time. I would have been licensed here a lot sooner. So that process took a really long time.
Wow.
Luckily, I was able to start my business before I was fully licensed here. Because my partner is licensed here, and he's been a North Carolina attorney for almost 20 years.
Got it.
So I could practice under his license because I'm also licensed in Arizona. I just couldn't sign anything off individually, and I had to disclose to my clients that I'm a licensed attorney.
However, I'm going through the process, and it's could be a year, could be whatever it is. But I've got this guy that's got 20 years saying that I'm okay to chat to you, right?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. So that was about the first year that I moved here. I had to kind of say that no issues from anybody. Yeah. I was more nervous about telling clients that, I think, than they were about hearing it. They were just like, okay, that's fine. Like, are you an attorney or not?
Yeah. I need help. Please help me. So what type of, I've learned a lot about law over the last, I'd say 2 years.
Yeah.
One, because I've dealt with just more law stuff than I care to want to know, right?
Yeah.
But I got a buddy, Dave Irvin, who hopefully I'm going to have on the podcast, and he does family law.
Yeah.
Right? He does family law. And he does
good for him.
Well, he did family law, but now someone that works with him, Paul, he was like, I don't like doing family law. It's like too much on my heart.
Yeah.
Right. But now he did construction for like 30 years or like 20 years or something like that. So he does construction law now. Yeah. That's his main thing. But then his practice also does family law as well.
Yeah.
What type of law do you practice?
Yeah. So me specifically, I handle employment and business law for employers. It's a lot of contracts, employment contracts, any kind of business contract, business formation, sale, really anything along those lines, but only for employers. I don't do, I don't represent employees in employment litigation or anything like that.
Got it.
Typically, if a business owner needs an attorney, they need some contracts drafted or they just have legal questions, like, can I do what I'm doing with my business? And they have employees or they're thinking about getting employees. It's nice because I can kind of start having those discussions with them. Yeah, and prepare them for, that's a great goal, but you need to have this in place. Or you have 1099 independent contractors, but from what you're telling me, they really are employees. So you got to make some changes, or you need to do X, Y, Z and count them as employees. So a lot of those discussions. And then I do estate planning, just individual estate planning. Sometimes comes in handy when a business owner a small business owner has their business. They want to protect their business. Maybe they want to pass it down to their children, or they want to be prepared if something happens to them and their spouse isn't going to know how to run the business. Like that's not what they do from day to day. Like my husband's not an attorney. If something happened to me and my partner, our business would not be, well, for other reasons, it can't pass to a non-attorney, but he wouldn't know the first thing to do. So, and that's in every profession. So that we do a lot of that. And then my big background's in workers' comp. So I do a lot of workers' comp consulting with businesses, like do they need to have workers' comp insurance? And if they do, I recommend that they talk to somebody about getting a policy in place, or what happens if you don't have that? How do you handle a workers' comp claim? So some of that I discuss, and then I work with another firm here in town and assist them on some workers' comp litigation. So
I bet your phone's ringing off the hook. Your phone rang twice since we've been here, right?
In which I get a lot of spam too.
Sure.
Like I don't know. So that's kind of what I do. My business partner, so with Atlas Legal, we do business employment, estate planning. My business partner has done estate planning for his whole legal practice and business law. So if there's something complex that needs to be done that I haven't seen yet, really because I've only been an attorney this is year 6. So compared to somebody with 20 years of experience, we just did a dynasty trust, which took almost a year to get done.
Wow.
It's a huge project. That was the first one I've done, not the first one my partner's done. And so it was great for me to be able to experience that. And now I can assist somebody else that may want to know how to do that.
I think the important part about business is you have to align yourself with somebody who has done it and who can show you, because if you're just trying to do it like yourself and no one's guiding you, you're just like, what do I do next? But just having someone that's done it for 20 years is like, oh, I've done this before.
Yeah.
Actually, you're going to do the boring parts, but you're going to learn along the way.
Yeah.
And you're like, I'm happy to learn. Like, here it is. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, that's the stuff I love. Because I do the same thing with insurance. Like, I've been doing insurance for close to 10 years now. Mm-hmm. And then I find myself on these Zoom calls, and I'm with like hundreds of agents at a time.
Yeah.
And they're coming up to me like, Dr. Matthew, like, can I just talk to you about this one objection that I had in the house, or this one thing? And I'm like, oh, just say this. Like, oh, that's so profound. And I'm like, really? And it's to me because I've done it for 10 years.
Yeah.
It seems so common. But when I was there 10 years ago, I was going through the same exact thing.
Yeah.
And so I'm realizing now that I am that person to these people.
Yeah.
But then I'm like, oh, do this. I'm trying to like give them all the things that I wish I knew 8 years ago. And I'm like, hey, go set yourself up as an LLC. Go set yourself up for all your commissions to flow to this, so you're not getting like, tax stuff and all that. I'm like, this is the things that you need to know now, because this is stuff I wish I knew, because if not, I was taxed so heavily my first 7 or 8 years. And now I'm like starting to learn it. And I'm like, do this.
And that's great. I think gatekeeping is a horrible practice.
Yeah.
I experienced a lot of gatekeeping in Phoenix, Arizona. I think maybe because it's a bigger city, it's a very big billboard city, a big attorneys fighting with each other and gatekeeping information. And so I think it would have been a lot harder for me to start a practice in Phoenix than here, where I feel like people don't gatekeep in Wilmington. I have had no issues asking questions to really anybody, and vice versa. If I give free legal advice all the time. I feel like if I can help them without crossing professional boundaries that I have to maintain as an attorney, I'll do it. I think that that's part of being a part of a community is you have to give if you're going to take. There has to be a balance. And I love that you're not gatekeeping, you're giving information that younger people need so they can be successful one day too, because I think that that's such a better environment to run your business in than the adverse. Like, I'm just not an adverse person. As an attorney, like, I tell potential clients, I'm like, look, if you're looking for an attorney that is aggressive, that they're a bulldog, and that, that's not me. Like, sure. I will advocate for you, and 9 times out of 10, we're going to get you what you want, but I'm not going to do that by being a jerk.
Right.
I'm very good at settling disputes. I'm very easy to work with. I get along with other attorneys well. I'm not going to like come in fist pounding on the table and be a jerk. And you may need that, and that may be what you're looking for, but that's not what I have to offer you. Yeah. My personality's not like that.
Yeah, so. I'm the same way. It's like, I help so much. I get messages all the time from people that I know from Lexington, South Carolina, or people I've connected with back in Arkansas who I grew up with, and like, hey, I have an insurance question. And I'll just answer the question like, all right, thanks. And I'm like, wait a second, I can get paid for that. And I'm like, what? It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't matter. But eventually what I found out is those people, sometimes 2 to 3 years later, end up reaching back out and going, hey, I really need your help. I need to buy this type of policy. Can you get it for me? I'm like, yep.
Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah.
And so there's this thing in business that is really hard to explain to a young person is, one, not all business is good business.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
We get these. I'm sure you get these calls. And you're like, it sounds like the greatest thing in the world. Like, we need this, this, and this, and you're like, we're gonna everything. But then you waste all your time, and it's like not even close to worth it. But then sometimes, you get this random call, and it's like, I have this client, Louise. Hi, Louise, if you're watching this. She's like a Facebook friend, but she's a client for my final expense. And she was like, hey, I can't do it today. And I'm like, no worries. I have 2 podcasts. And she's like, but come by on Monday. Like, I have some pizza and we're going to eat some pizza. You know what I mean? But she wants to introduce me to her whole family because I've done such a great job with her that she trusts me enough to go get more.
Yeah.
But taking the time, going out to see her, really understanding what she wants. And I've gone to her house 2 or 3 times. The money that I've made is far less than what I could have done way more, made more money elsewhere.
Yeah.
But because I spent the time, she saw it. And so now she's going, you need to talk to everybody else. And so therefore it makes more money in the long run.
Yeah.
But it's so hard to, as a new business owner, as a new life insurance agent, to go, I better be spending all my time with people who are just going to pay me.
Yeah.
It's the hardest thing to do when you're starting out.
Yeah. Good to know you just said that you're a new life insurance agent, because that for me, a lot of my estate planning clients, younger ones especially, they come, they're like, we go through, what are your assets and liabilities? Like everything. Do you have life insurance? Do you have, a savings account? Do you have any IRAs or anything like that? And I think a lot of younger people don't know anything about life insurance. And so for me, I'm going to be 31 next month. My husband and I have each had life insurance since we were in our early 20s.
Yep.
For various personal reasons, but for us, like, we were really glad somebody told us what it was and discussed with us, do we need it? Do we not need it? And we still use the same financial advisor today that we did when we were in our early 20s because of that trust. And but anyway, the life insurance, I think part of like doing business in Wilmington is like, we're sitting down having a discussion, and I want to be able to refer my clients to somebody that I can just call up on the phone and be like, hey, I have these clients. They have some questions. Like, can you help them out? Or can you talk to them? If you can't help them, that's fine. And I trust you to refer them to somebody who can. And that was one huge thing that I wanted to make sure in starting my own business. That was important to me. And I worked for 2 larger firms in Phoenix, and I didn't really have any control over who I was referring my clients to. They were my clients, and I was talking to them every day, but like, I had to refer them to who my boss said I had to refer them to.
Got it.
But I wasn't really allowed to have a relationship with them, and that made me uncomfortable. I didn't. That's
like another form of gatekeeping.
Yeah. It's like, well, yeah, they're the firm's clients, but like, these people, I'm having to delve into their personal lives.
Yeah, they trust me to go to the right person, and I don't know, you're just telling me to send this person, but I don't know who they are, and I don't know if I trust them yet.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And they're probably good.
Yeah.
Because you have a relationship. There's a reason you're sending them to them. But
yeah.
But for me, it's like I'm the same way. Like if I know somebody that needs construction law, I'm like, Dave,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
this is who you need to go to.
Yeah.
Or I have this in family law. I'm like, you need to talk to Paul because I've
Yeah.
sat down with those guys. I've like broken bread with them and like played poker and like I
Yeah.
know them really on a personal level. So
Yeah.
when they have questions, they come to me about these things and I go to them for these things and I push more business their way than anything.
Yeah.
And that's just how you do it. So if you ever have anybody that has questions about life
Yeah.
insurance, it's a lot of what I do, life and health. So I worked as a director of sales and marketing for a very, very large firm that actually got bought by an insurance company here in August of 2022 for a large sum of cash. But I decided, I was like, oh, well, I know what I'm doing now. I'm going to go do my own thing. And so it's been a struggle. It's been, it sounds really, I call it easy and sexy to just go make your own insurance agency, but then you have to go get licensed in all these 50 states. And I have to go like do fingerprints and get affidavits. And I'm like calling Dave. I'm like, hey, can you do a notary? He's like, yeah, technically because I passed my bar, I get like the note. I don't have to even study to get my notary.
Yeah.
So I can do it. But he's like, I hate this crap. You know what I mean? So like I have to go do all that stuff. It's just not fun. But, but now it's all set up. It's like, oh, I have somebody in Pennsylvania that has needs life insurance. Can you help? And I'm like, yep. And I just develop these relationships all over the country.
Yeah.
And so now when people call, I'm like, yeah, I can help. And if I can't help because I'm busy doing this, I have right now since March 360 agents that work with me. Yeah.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah, all over the country.
Yeah.
So if it's like not me personally, I'm like, hey, I know who I think you would vibe well with. Let me get you to one of my agents. And they're like, great. And I just connect the two and then that's it.
Yeah.
So anytime y'all have any questions, that's a lot of what I do.
That.
And if you ever have any questions about marketing or SEO, I tell everybody, if you're a guest on the podcast, you have my cell phone number. You can just text or call me and I'll help you out if you have questions about how a CRM works or all that stuff. I didn't want to do that because I enjoyed the life insurance and I enjoyed the podcasting. It's just marketing was just a big portion of what we did. So I just got really good at it.
Yeah.
So if you ever have any questions on that, like, please.
Definitely going to utilize you for that.
If you have questions now, let's do it now because the point of the show is to showcase other people like, hey, if this is things you need to do to help your business scale. So
I mean, I think when I moved here, a big thing for me starting my business was building up a reputation. Like I was new to Wilmington. I didn't really know anybody outside my family. I wanted to learn, what is Wilmington all about? Is this going to be a good fit for what I have to offer to the community? And so I spent a lot of time. I went to PCYP. Was the first thing I went to when I moved here. I met Jenna. Jenna's friends with my business partner, and she's wonderful. She's like, come, to my event. I brought my husband. We met Chris Welch there. And now, I mean, I watched their dog when they had their baby. Like it's just, that's something I just love about the community here. And so it was just wild. I was like, this is great. Like there are so many excited people to be here. Like people are not just here because their boss told them they need to go attend the event. Like people want to be here. So to anybody listening, that is a really good way to start, whether you're a business owner or not, to just meet people, like meet personal relationships or business. It's great. You have to want to, do it. You've got to put the effort in too. Like you won't just show up and, I mean, you could just show up and people start talking to you because everyone's excited to be there. But
I tell everybody with Port Senior Professionals, and Jenna's great. I talk to her like once every 2 weeks, and then it's just after the call that we do, it's just me and her just vibing for like 30 minutes. And she's like, how can I help you? How can I help you? And I'm just giving her some advice, and she's just wonderful. But I tell people with Port Senior Professionals, like you can go every month, and you'll always see some people that are always there. But you'll always meet new people. Yeah. Because there's constant new people coming in. Yeah. And you can spend the entire 2 hours that it's going on and just talk to like 4 people because you just start talking really well and exchanged numbers. And
Yeah.
that's the whole point of Port Senior Professionals.
Yeah.
And I love what she's built. It took her like 15 years to build it, but like look at it now, and she's just rocking and rolling.
Yeah.
And so just being around that type of community first, I think is super important to start getting in that network.
Yeah.
But then after that, you go back to that reputation. That reputation is so strong. So when you do help somebody and they're like, oh, thank you so much, you want to go get those Google reviews.
Yeah.
You want to go get those. And I'll tell you the secret.
Yeah. Let me know. Let me know the secret. Yeah. You know what?
So I had this guy come by. So the countertops that you saw, right?
Yeah.
I mean, my wife and I been so stressed about these countertops.
Yeah.
It's like I've been living off of like Encrustables and like chicken nuggets like 4 months.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And they're like, how'd you lose all this weight? And I'm like, I just don't have countertops and I walk all the time. It's just pretty simple. But Wilbur and his team came by and they did 4 installations yesterday. And they're supposed to be here between 3 and 6. They got here at like 7.
Uh-huh.
They were working from 7 to 9 o'clock last night. Like they left here at like 8:30 or 9 o'clock.
Yeah.
And I was just like, thank you so much for being here. Like, I can't believe you take. He's like, look, man, we got a job to do. Like, we're here for you.
Yeah.
I'm writing him like a handwritten like letter. Like, hey, thanks so much. I know you took the time and doing all that stuff. Well, if he saw something in me and he sees that, I'm like, hey, would you give me a 5-star review? Would you do this? He's going to refer business my way.
Yeah.
He's going to do that. And guess what? I'm going to refer business this way because I saw the craftsmanship of what he was doing. And he had 2 younger guys. He's been doing it for 16 years.
Yeah.
And he had a guy that'd been doing it for 9, a guy that'd been doing it for 6. I'm like, how long have you been teaching these young kids? And he's like, oh, we're all a family. And, you know, he's been doing it this long. So he's like, I'm old. I can't lift these big stones anymore. So, I recruited that guy. He was doing flooring. So he's going to do this now. And I'm teaching them the craftsmanship of really beveling the edges and all that stuff. And I was like, that's so cool, man. So I got to sit down with him here last night while they were kind of finishing up and just chat with him.
Yeah.
But a handwritten letter.
Yeah.
And more importantly, this is the secret that if anybody's watching, this is it. Go get you a wax sealer.
Okay. Fancy.
You can get a hot glue gun.
Yeah.
And just and just do that, right? But the open rate on that is like 100%.
Wow. I mean, yeah, if I got a letter with a wax seal, am I getting a letter from the King of England? Like who's writing this to me and what do they have to say in there? I'm excited.
And your penmanship is important and mine's awful. I mean, I have chicken scratch, right? But it's legible, right?
Yeah.
But the time that you take, albeit 10 minutes to write a letter, wax seal it.
Yeah.
Lick it, put it in.
Yeah.
And do that. And people think about the time that you took.
Yeah.
And even if it's other attorneys that you've done business with that you may have lost the case or you've done something like, and I learned this from Dave, he'll write letters to people he just went to court with and be like, hey, it's really good meeting you, blah, 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 like all this stuff. But guess what? They reach back out to him and go, I want to work with you now.
Yeah.
And so his practice just keeps growing because of it. And I'm like, that's genius. So writing a handwritten letter in a thoughtful one and then wax sealing it.
Yeah.
Your open rate is like 95% because who's not going to open that?
Yeah.
And then there's just this heartfelt message. It's like, hey, do you mind giving me a 5-star review? It'd really mean the world to me if you did that.
Yeah.
Go to this Google link, go here. I'm going to send you a text and you'll get a text from the client or whoever it is. Like, I can't thank you so much.
Yeah.
I want to send you a Google review. You send it and now you've got a 5-star review. Well, if there's 100 attorneys in the area, are people going to go to the one that has 100 reviews and you got a 4.9, or are they going to go to the one that has 5 with 5 stars?
Right.
The one with 100,
right?
Because it showcases that you've helped 100 people, and they're going to read those reviews.
Yeah,
she was fantastic to work with, and this, that, and the third, and you'll get those. And then so when people call you, it's like, hey, I know you're the best because I'm looking you up on Google, and you're number one.
Yeah.
Like, all right, great. And so then you get to, it'll really help grow your business.
I appreciate that. I'm taking a mental note of that. And I love the seal, the wax seal. You're definitely right on that. Like if I get a wax seal letter from someone, I'm opening that immediately. Like I want to know what's in there.
Yeah.
But it is really nice to get a thank you note from somebody. There's an attorney that does a lot of the same type of work I do. He does estate planning, but he also does probate litigation, which I don't do probate litigation.
What is probate litigation?
It
For those
is-
that might be watching like me that doesn't know what it is.
Yeah. So when you decide you need an estate plan, just a basic estate plan, like you want a will, you want powers of attorney, healthcare, durable, a living will, all that kind of stuff. Probate is the process that happens after you die and opens your estate. And so if you don't have the proper documents in place to tell the court how to distribute your assets, you may have to, your estate will have to go through probate litigation, and they will have to fight for your wishes. It's emotional. It's a painful mess. I don't do that right now. I would refer it to, his name's David Anderson. He's super wonderful. He wrote me a written thank you letter though after we met. And so that's what probate litigation is. To avoid that, one is to have an estate plan. If you don't have a will, your assets have to go through probate. They have to go through probate even if you have a will, but if you have a piece of paper that's valid that says to the judge, this is how I want my assets distributed, and there's nobody to contest that, then that's great. Then your assets get distributed and it's fairly easy. If you don't, then the court has to figure all that out. They decide what to do with your assets, and really, does anybody want the state to make the decision on who's going to receive your assets? Probably not. So it's good to have a basic estate plan at the very minimum. So if you have kids, have guardianship provision in there. What happens to your children if something happens to you? And if you have a spouse, what happens, if something happens to both of you? Making that decision early for, not very much money in the grand scheme of things is going to make things, one, a lot easier for your children. Two, they're not going to have issues with maybe becoming wards of the state for a period of time. And then also your family, like if you that
it's hard to explain. They'll thank you so much because I deal with it because I do what's called final expense insurance.
Yeah.
Right. So funerals.
Yeah.
I'm talking to senior citizens, and I'm like, you're 65, you're 70. Statistical likelihood is you might pass away.
Yeah.
And do you have a will? Do you have this? Do you have something in place that when you do pass away, who's going to take care of it? Who's the person?
Right.
Who's your designated person that if you pass away right now, who's the one that's going to say, you know exactly what to do? And everybody says, well, my kids know what to do. And I say this, everybody's a rocket scientist until it's time to go to the moon.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's just, and I say, look, I know it's weird talking to a 34-year-old kid, you're 60, 70, right? About your own funeral. But I call it a fire and forget missile. We talk about it one time. You never got to worry about it again. And then, that's taken care of. So when you pass away, funeral's taken care of. I'm like, get a will.
Yeah.
Go to you. Go handle those things, because how I got this house was the person didn't have a will. And so husband and wife had 5 kids. Husband passed away for a routine eye surgery or something like that.
Oh my gosh.
Just routine, gone. Wife found out there's 2 kids out of wedlock. House, he didn't have anything in place. So the house went to the court. And now they're going, well, now this lady found out these 2 other kids get half of.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that sucks, but I'm going to give you this much for the house. And so I got a really good deal on the house, but that's the importance of it.
Yeah.
If he would have had that, and I think he was 50s, what I mean? You're not supposed to pass away in your 50s, but anything could happen.
Right.
And if you would have just had that, it'd have been like, all my assets go here, all my assets go here. I want this, this, and this.
Yeah.
It'd have been fine. And it's just like, how long does it take someone to get just a basic will set up?
Yeah, start to finish with me. I do free consultations, so I will meet with the clients. We'll go over, why are you wanting to talk about estate planning? Like, what are your goals? We talk about what my recommendations are, And then I let them know about the process. I have them fill out. I'm pretty proud of the way I've streamlined the process for my clients. I think you have that first conversation, and how you were saying it's kind of an emotional conversation for some people to be thinking about their mortality.
Yep.
And so, I say the same thing to my clients. Like, when this is done, you don't have to think about it until, if you have a major life change at some point. Like,
if you want to change something later, sure.
Yeah, then you give me a call and we make those changes. But once it's done, it's done. You don't have to think about it anymore. And so, we talk about that. If they can get me the information I need fairly quickly, a week to 2 weeks, I can get the rough draft done. They review it. When everything looks good, then we schedule them to come in. We go over it. It's signed, notarized, witnessed, and then they leave with their documents. So it's fairly painless. Some estate plans are more complex than the others, and so those may require a little bit more time. But like standard, 2 spouses come in, their assets are, some accounts that have beneficiary designations, and then they have a house, some vehicles, and just their regular everyday property that people have, jewelry or clothes, like whatever. It's very simple. And I charge for around $750 for if it's a single person and they just want a basic estate plan, and that comes with a whole package. They get the will, they get the living will, they get the durable power of attorney, healthcare power of attorney, and a HIPAA authorization form. We just do all that at the same time, and that includes like communication back and forth, the consultation, the signing, notary documents, all that kind of stuff. And then if it's a spouse situation, and theirs are going to be essentially really the same documents.
It's a package deal. If
yeah,
you will.
yeah. Then I charge about $1,500. So just to kind of, that's around. There's plenty of attorneys who charge less than that. There's plenty of attorneys who charge more than that. I think with me, I don't have a paralegal or a legal assistant, so they're dealing with me the whole time.
Sure.
They're getting the attorney, and so they call me directly, email me directly. I like to think I give a little bit more of a personalized experience than just kind of, some firms, and that's, some people like to do this. It's more of a form situation. It's quick, like it's not very thorough. My documents are a little bit lengthy because I want to make sure all situations are encompassed,
right?
And you're protected, so that you're not going to have a probate litigation situation. We want to avoid that up front,
right?
So that does cost a little bit more. People ask me all the time, like, well, I could just go on LegalZoom and pay, whatever, $300 for a will. I'm like, yeah, you can certainly do that. You don't need an attorney to draft your will. And you can just go get it notarized, and you have to have 2 witnesses in the state of North Carolina. Mm-hmm. But that form is not going to be personalized to you and your assets. One thing that I do in my documents is I have a memo provision. So like if you have, certain objects that you want to go to certain people, but you don't want to put them in your will in writing, you can attach a memo to that, and you can change it and edit it as time goes on. Your wife gets another necklace, and she decides she wants that to go to her niece or to you, like specifically. That doesn't have to be documented in the will. And then maybe if she sells it or she gives it away, and so that's no longer part of the estate. I think that's important.
Sure.
So that's like one of the things that I make sure is incorporated. How do you want to dispose of your remains? Like, do you want to be cremated? Do you want to be buried? Do you want your ashes spread on the pier of whatever beach by specific people? Like, those are things we can put in writing. So that I tell people
that's super important. Like, what you want done, because I was trying to explain again. Everybody's a rocket scientist, so it's time to go there. And if you say, I want this done, this done, this done. Yeah. And you can say all those things. You can tell everybody, like, Connor, when I pass away, I want to fly to Hawaii and spread my ashes in the water. Mm-hmm. Well, that doesn't mean anything unless it's notarized and properly done. Right. And then it legally has to be done that way. Yeah. You know what I mean? And I'm like, that's super important when you're talking with somebody. I'm like, hey, this is real. Like, you're going to, it sounds so weird, but like, you're going to pass away, and I'm going to make sure that you get done what you want done.
Yeah. And I also really harp on having improper documents. I think is worse than not having them at all. Because if you memorialize in writing something that's incorrect, or it's not specific enough, or there's ambiguity, that's going to lead to probate litigation also. That's going to lead to the judge not really understanding, or if you're not clear on how the laws work in this state, and you just use a form you found on LegalZoom. Nothing against LegalZoom. I just, for me personally, I'm not going to have that kind of document.
I'll give you the rebuttal for this. It'll cost you less on LegalZoom now. It's going to cost you more on the back end.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's better to pay a little bit more up front and get it done right and perfect, so you don't have to worry about it, because again, you won't be here for when someone's reading your will and all this stuff, and then if all the paperwork's incorrect because you didn't have somebody representing you, sorry, I don't know what to tell you. And so, like, but the other thing is too is like, I'll say this to the camera, if you pay for it now in your 20s, your 30s, your 40s, when you don't realize, you don't think you have much wealth. You'll realize you have more than you think, but it puts you in the mindset that you are building your estate. You're building your stuff. Like, all this stuff costs money. Mm-hmm. My cars cost money. The watch costs money. The emeralds in my life, like, this costs money. Like, I'm even thinking about it now. I'm like, yeah, you're right. I got to write all this stuff down. Yeah. It'll put you into a mindset that you are building your family's wealth and you're protecting that. Yeah.
There's a lot of different avenues too to do that. Like, a lot of people will contact me and say, my buddy has a trust and I want to have that. And we'll say, okay, well, why don't you come in and talk to me about what your goals are? And I'll let you know if I recommend a trust or not. It sounds like fancy. And so a lot of people, but the, like, federal estate taxes are not what they used to be. And so now we're not really recommending trusts as much as we were. Like, trusts are the main reasons that people have a trust is privacy. A trust is not a public document. It's not going to go through probate. Your assets that are held in the trust and owned by the trust are not going to go through the probate process, where your will is going to be public. Like, anybody can read your will, see what assets you have, that kind of stuff. So some people like to have privacy. There's a lot of tax reasons, but again, it's like $12.5 million per individual before taxes. So it's most people that are coming to me don't have that much in assets. And so not always necessary for tax reasons, could be. And then it passes outside of probate. So like somebody doesn't have to go down to the courthouse and ask the judge to distribute your assets. They're just going to pass like through the trustee. And so it's a little bit smoother. That being said, it's a little bit more expensive to fund and maintain your trust. Your trust is going to own, like if you want to put your home in your trust, you have to redeed your house in the name of the trust, that kind of stuff. So it's a little bit more complex than some people will say, well, I want to have a trust and it seems like, a good idea. And we'll talk about that more and discuss why it may or may not be the best idea, why a will might accomplish the goals that person has for cheaper and easier. And explain why. And then if in the future, you hit these financial goals, come back to me and we can get a trust drafted.
We'll get the next portion going. Yeah. How do people get a hold of you?
Yeah, so you can email me. I would even give my direct line out on here. My direct line is 484-788-1087. That's how you'll get directly to me. Bypass our secretary. And then my email address is my name, Victoria, at atlas-legal.net. That's the quickest way to get a hold of me. Our website is atlas-legal.net. There's like an info thing on there you can fill out too. But for people listening, I would say just email me, call me, text me, and I'll get back to you and set something up. I do Zoom consultations, especially business owners who are busy. Like, they don't always have time to come down to my office in Mayfair area and like meet with me for an hour of their day. They're busy. They're running around. Like we can meet wherever. So yeah.
Well, perfect.
That's the quickest way.
Well, that was the whole podcast.